Right. Good morning, Malaysia, and good morning, Asia. I think it's glad that we have elevated the stage now. I think Marketing Fest is no longer just a Malaysian event. I think we have sharing across Asia today. I was made known that there's a lot of calling from other countries as well. Welcome online. First and foremost, let me just share the insight, right? I think today's stage on this panel discussion, we're going to speak about the data insight. As you all may be aware that as we are now into actually the fourth industrial revolutions, right? So there are actually prior three industrial revolutions. Let me set the stage, right? In the 1870, right, when the steam engine was formed, that was really the first industrial revolution. It actually transformed the economy to some extent, right? Then we go in the second industrial revolution, somewhere around 1870. Let me correct it. The first one was in 1765. That was a steam engine. The second was in 1870 when electricity was actually introduced to the world. We are actually to be more productive. I think the change was really make the world to be more productive. You are able to work longer hours and so on, right? So fast forward to where we are. Most of us lived through the era of 1969 where computers was invented. That was to some extent the world have gone through the first phase of digitization, to some extent of some area of digitalization of business process and so on. So a lot of people pretty confused of late. We heard about this word called digital transformation. So right, when you talk about digital transformation, it's pretty crucial that you see in today's part of the world, a lot of things require data, right? So fast forward to 2016, where the evolution, you see that we moved to the world of the what you call the fourth industrial revolution. You see this being called the people, the computers, we enter in this phase of cyber physical phase. So the biggest thing that is going to change is right now, the biggest, most valuable asset in the world is called data, right? Data now is the new oil. With me today, I'm glad to have all the strong panelists introduced by Maureen already. They are all experts in their respective field, right? From Carroll, which is a GM for Similarweb and Southeast Asia. I'm going to do a quick round of kind of like warming up the stage. This was impromptu, was not in the question that I propped to them early, right? So maybe I'll start with Carroll first, the ladies first, right? Carroll, I was made known that you started your career in STARS in the digital marketing field, then you went to Control Shift. What did you actually stay into this boring field of data, data? Why?
Right. I started my career is actually totally is nothing to do with data, right? I started my career as a programmer those days in STAR. Right. Then I eventually, after 3 years of doing codes, I leave the code and go for the cash, which is going to do advertising. Right. That's actually not far from what my core is, where it's still along the digital line. Right. So I was actually in the advertising for about 5 years. Then actually I think I should move to the bright side or the dark side, which is the agency life. So I was with agency about 4 years. Then that gives us a different view in terms of you have your own product to sell, but now you're going into an agency, like you need to provide a neutral view to your client, what works the best for the client. So then that's where the data is actually getting more and more important. After that, I was actually where next? You have seen the publisher, you have seen the agency, what next? So that's where the opportunity came onto the table. That's where this is actually Similarweb, one of the biggest, actually the analytics company in the world, and we just get listed in NYSE 2 months ago. That's actually pretty amazing. When you're in this industry, you always want to keep yourself alive with something new. So that's could be something like something keep you awake during the night. Yeah.
Great, nice. Thanks. Congrats on the listings of 2 months ago, right? You mentioned. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
That's great. Right. Let's move on to the gentleman, right? Ashran, right? Ashran has been, I think, known to most of Malaysia as a former CEO of course, Magic. And now, of course, he's now, I noticed that when I checked on his LinkedIn, I told Ashran the other day, it's exactly 2 years, 9 months You imagine, and you're now 2 years, 9 months in data. What a coincidence, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
he's someone who always say that I'm the go-getter, I am the gung-ho type, want to fight and change the ecosystem, right? So what made you actually jump onto the field of Dattel in this world?
As you rightly put it, I'm a bit of a sucker, right? So when I was sitting down with the founders of Dattel, the thing that kind of resonated with me most was the mission of democratizing data, right? That was the one that kind of appealed to me most. And you know, it sounds daunting, and anytime it sounds daunting, it excites me most. And that was when I kind of made the leapfrog to say, you know what? I think you know, enough time at Magic, time to get back on the other side of the spectrum to kind of drive this whole agenda on democratizing data. And it's really about making good quality data accessible to all levels of businesses, not just to large companies, essentially.
Wow. So now you're sucked into the world of data, right?
Ah, very much immersed, very much immersed.
Right. Good, great. Right. Let's move on to our now our guest of ours, Kelvin Prawtama from Shipper. I believe Kelvin is calling in from Jakarta.
Yes,
right?
true.
Right. Good morning, Kelvin. How is Jakarta this morning?
Well, pretty sunny, I guess.
Right,
Well,
that's good. Right. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I understand you have sent some short stint with Grab and you're now with Shipper, right? So,
yes,
and you know, you are very born a data guy from day one, right?
Well, thank you so much for the question, Sunny. But honestly, if I can share with the audiences today that I was not coming from the data background actually. Well, in fact, I was from the sales background. But since the first company that I worked with was in the AI and data industry, that's where my journey came in. I mean, my data journey. So I mean, I didn't even know how data looks like in the first place. I mean, when people talking about, oh, using AI to predict or probably create a marketing strategy and so on, it didn't come to my mind how did it happen. So that because of that, I decided just to deep dive into the subject and learn it on my own. So right now, well, after successfully learning it, I try to be a data analyst myself.
Right. If you don't mind, I ask you, what's your major? Since you're not coming from a data background.
Well, I was coming from the business major actually, international business.
Right.
So in the past, I never thought that I was going to be data analyst today, but here I am.
Okay, good, great. So we have a great diversity this morning, I can see, right? So it's pretty exciting. I'm really looking forward for the balanced 50 minutes or so. But to kick off today's discussion, we're going to probably start with a few icebreaking questions for the panelists. By the way, for all the audience out there, we welcome your questions. If you should have any question, please raise it through the Q&A session. I'll be able to pick up and actually forward later part. So what we intend to do for this morning is that I'm going to start with about a few questions for the panelists, and a later part we try to address as most questions that will be raised by the audience. I think to make it interesting for this morning, we have to stay engaging, right? I know this is kind of like a virtual event. I normally used to do it on the stage. We can do a lot of dance and pop show to get the energy moving, but it's very hard for me to communicate seeing the screen, right? But nonetheless, we try our best to stay engaging, right? So to start with this morning, I'm probably going to ask this question to your panelists out there. Maybe we'll start with the ladies first. Carroll, you always have the privilege this morning, right?
Not good to be a lady in this call.
Well, I guess that the ladies always
set the benchmark, Carroll. Set the benchmark.
The benchmark, great. Yeah, I like Ashran's view. So, Carroll, I mean, being the leaders in data and you see so much of it, right? What are some of the new emerging trends or technologies along the data field that can assist, I believe, in decision making for any business decision, in particular, perhaps marketing? Yeah.
Right. since actually coming from similar, maybe I'll just touch on something that which we are always familiar with, how the analytics world coming from. That's where we started with the very much into cookie spaces, and that's where we get to do a lot of targeting or analytics based on the cookies data that we're getting, right? So I would like to maybe highlight something that is actually new here, that also making a key differentiator for Similarweb today. That is actually that we're entering something that is called a cookieless data collections technology area, right? In this case, what is actually different between the cookies and the non-cookies based kind of analytics field is that we're focusing on the click stream today, right? So that is actually the difference is that with the aggregated data at the site level, so instead of the individual level from the more cookies kind of basis, this gives us marketers a different view in terms of the real-time browsing behavior. Right. So cookies tells us about the user, but the site actually let us understand how the website and the app being used by the user itself, right? A simpler way to look into this is actually where we let's say in this case, to explain this is like we use cookies to actually targeting like the user from example, like let's say I'm looking for a new car, right? So we have a very pretty much in-depth data in terms of like defining an individual that looking for a car, right? It could be a car enthusiast or actually a car shopper, right? But one thing that is actually we are trying to fill in the gap here is the browsing behavior, where example in this case, I'm looking for a car, but I'm actually not reading any car review or browsing any car site, right? So what the new things that we actually venture into is like we're looking into the content consumption area, right? So for example, like I could be reading the parenting site and I'm looking for, you know, as a first time parents, what car is suitable for me, right? So that is actually based on the content. So that actually, I would say if I were to pick, this is something that is new that we are venture in, that is also different from the usual way that we're seeing the data collections. Yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned about non-cookie based, right? So I guess in the past, cookie technology was very much trying to profile the user behavior so that they have certain informed decision to inform the AI so that they can bring the data in place, right? So by just looking at the example, I'm looking at a car, I'm just looking to browse a car, just a car, right? So there's only information you know about me, right? So how do you know which profile or which segment of car that we are looking at, right? So is that how do you create profiling if I'm just a typical car buyer? Yeah.
So it's very much when we look into the content and the signal that appearing into the site consumption. So for example, like what would be the content and cross visit in between the site that I'm doing. So it could be like in this case is we are looking into the signal coming from different channels, like how these are relevant to the car shop. Example, me, like it's a car shopper. So it could be something like the signal that you're seeing, like, you know, being a first time parent, that it's time to change your car, right? It is something along the way that the content that you actually consume. So it's really giving the consumer today a different way of it's very hard to catch the consumer today. They're everywhere, right? This is something new that we are focusing on. That is a browsing behavior. It's a real-time behavior. Yep.
Right. Thanks, Carroll. Right. Moving on to Ashran. Ashran, I know that Dattel has been trying to create a platform, right, to suck the data in so that you can share the data out to the world for a better informed decision, right? So, of course, in the early panel, we heard about you can use platform without free tools out there. So what's the fundamental difference by having some, to use a paid platform like Dattel versus a free platform? Can you share a little bit?
No, sure. A good question, actually. And I also like Carroll touching just now a little bit about the cookieless and how first-party data is going to be very important moving forward. But to your question, Sunny, in particular, when we talk about platform at our end, it's not just a platform that requires client data. We have got ready-made in terms of consumer behavior data that is simplified for anyone to use within the organization. So that's the edge that we have in terms of providing that value to clients. Because a lot of people that we meet, especially if they are starting in their data journey and they have not captured the sufficient data yet, then they're in this little catch-22 situation, right? How do I get started? What I have is not enough to give me the total insights, but I want to have that perspective also of the customers that I can potentially tap out there. So that's where we come in as a starting point. But not just that. Then as in the previous panel session, I think Sen talked about companies' digital maturity, right? And as the company evolves and gets more data internally, then that's where we come in to help the clients mesh their data with the consumer data within a particular country. And a good example of this is this, right? A little bit of an extension of what Carroll was saying just now. If I am H&M or Uniqlo, right? If I got my customer data, all I know, and like you said, Sunny, just what you buy from me, right? I know Sunny comes, every weekend, he will buy shirts, he will spend about this much. That's all. But how do I, make a good guess in terms of what else does Sunny like, so that I can introduce new products, so that I can find other partners to be able to bundle with through, so that I can communicate with you, right? And not just from a pure fashion perspective. So those are the kind of things that we kind of bring together to give that enrichment for any brand, regardless of size, whether you're small or large, to have that capability essentially.
Thanks, Ashran. So that was a good example. I think what you just mentioned is some form of marketing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Right. That's good. Right. So let me move on to Kelvin, right? Kelvin, I think the question is that you are coming from Indonesia. Tell us a little bit about some of the big developments of data usage, particularly maybe in a few companies that you're working on, or development of data usage in marketing, in particular in Indonesia.
Well, probably in the past, there's so many people deciding marketing strategy traditionally is something like, if I feel it's right, then I'm gonna go for it. But nowadays, if you just open up your LinkedIn and look for jobs, you can see that every kind of jobs require you to be able to utilize Tableau, Power BI. It's not only in marketing, but for product ops strategy and so on. There's so many companies in Indonesia are now adopting these tools to advance their business. And I think that it actually tells us that this indicates there are people over here are actually developing the data mindset for the people inside the company. And because I believe that not only I believe, but also everyone in the company also believe that if we understand well the data that we can generate, we can apply this on our day-to-day businesses. And especially for shipper, I only just joined the company for 2 to 3 weeks, but I can see that the development in terms of data is really fast because we have using multiple platforms, either free or probably subscribe with another platforms. And then starting from there, honestly, there's so many try and errors, but starting from there, we can learn on how to develop the data mindset inside the company.
Thanks, Kelvin. Right, that's great. Sounds great. So I'm trying to answer one of the live question from Karen Ho. I think you would raise it. Yeah, it's nice. Ashran, thanks for answering. The answer is obviously data, right? So Dattel, but I believe maybe I want to pose this question to the panelists, right? Maybe in the respective of, in the case of Ashran and Carroll represent Southeast Asia. I think both Ashran and Carroll, you guys are in Southeast Asia platform. Where are we now? Where are we now in regards to most of your client or the companies using data? Which stage are they? You think they are, when you come to, using data for decision making? How do you classify them? Most of them, which stage are they in? Of course, they are companies who are very advanced in the multinational, or companies who are very from the SMB. But where do you see Asia today? Yeah, maybe start with Carroll first. Yeah.
All right.
I will change the sequence, don't worry.
I can't change my gender, Carroll, so I can't help you here.
Right. Yeah, so Similarweb is actually now a 3 years setting up our hub in Southeast Asia here, that we mainly serve the client from these 6 main markets. That's Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and Vietnam. So if you hear me reading by the sequence in this, that's how the maturity of the market is, to be honest, right? In Malaysia, maybe from what we see, I will just take an overall first. Yeah, it is still in a very, I shall say this, in a very early stage in terms of the adoption and the application. I think that's actually more important. You know, reading data, but how you apply the data is actually the other challenge that we're facing. However, in certain industry, we do see, is pretty much more advanced. Like industry, for example, like e-commerce space is a very fast-moving pace. Certain job function like performance marketing, it does actually use data quite in depth already, right? In terms of Asia, or I mean more towards the Southeast Asia wise, I would say Singapore is still relatively more advanced in data. It is also mainly because strategically it is due to where the regional office is, the talent, the setup, the knowledge that's actually making them you know, a little bit more advanced as compared to other countries that I mentioned just now. Yeah, that's what we see.
Thanks. What's your perspective, Ashran, in this case? Yeah.
Similar to some extent, but let me dissect it from a slightly different lens. From a type of business perspective, yeah, the digital agencies are naturally, you know, up there. That's bread and butter, you know, and that's how they kind of go and convince prospecting clients on the edge that they have, and so forth. But when you take the actual business itself, on the SME front, you know, as one would expect, it is still at its very early stage. There is a very strong desire of wanting to ride this data wave, so to speak. Yeah, but there is also a little glass ceiling that's making them feel like, yeah, this one too much. People are talking about it, but you know, I got no time to do this, but I know people say it's important. So it is at an early stage, and the opportunity here, I guess, is you know, to be able to make things very simplified. At the SME level, it's not so much about them analyzing the data. It's actually giving them the results of analyzed data so that they can do something. Right?
Yeah, the applications.
All they want is essentially, you know, 3-step, 2-step, I can do something already. But they want to talk about data. But when you go to larger organizations, naturally, the desire to want to analyze omni-channel just now, and all these things are a bit more into play. But having said that, the companies somewhere in between is a little bit of in transition, if you ask me, between data for tactical purposes and data for strategy purposes. A lot of people are very much used to the Google Analytics and the Facebook Analytics out there that tends to be very tactical oriented. But the strategy oriented data analytics is not as prevalent. So that's how I kind of, it's a bit of a mishmash, but and it's almost similar across the region. Be it, at least we're in 4 countries, and the mapping, how Carroll puts it, is very much similar from a country level lens.
That's a good one you put, right? I think for corporate, it's mostly using data still for strategy, despite at times that a lot of investment use may not be justified with ROI. But I think you put a layman term for SME, right? Show me the money, right? If I invest, show me the ROI straight away. That's what they want to do, right? Okay, I think that's interesting, right? I mean, Kelvin, we understand that, you know, as you all know, this pandemic to some extent has increased according to almost about 50 million additional new digital users. Now we are almost 400 million of digital users out of the 650 million population in Southeast Asia. And a large part come from Indonesia. And we see a lot of wave, a lot of energy coming out from Indonesia, right? Is trying to transform to lead in this digital economy, right? Where do you see some of the Indonesian companies having challenge in adopting data in your own view? Yeah.
Well,
I know
personally,
there are a few big ones. Let me set the stage. There are a few big ones who are successful, the big name you all know. But how about the masses of the Indonesian company? What are they, SME in particular?
well, talking about SMEs over here, you can say that, well, they don't even show up in the first place, actually. So it's not kind of like if you Google the company's name, it will show up. No. So because basically they're not technologically driven, which results in a not data mindset. And basing on this, it's actually kind of hard for them to get them to see and understand the data. If you come to them and say, I have to agree with what Ashran has said just now, they only want results and only result they want to hear. So, so the development of SME over here, I would say that it's actually still more or less the same with before pandemic. And just to answer your questions, additional 50 million users, so I would just say that it's actually not SMEs, but probably people who used to prefer to go to shopping malls and so on, but because of the pandemic, they just don't have any other options. So they probably just use the mobile phones or any kind of technology devices to go to the internet to do their stuff.
Right. I think it's probably the contact tracing tools that was forced to by the government, right? Yeah, but actually, for me, I'm an Alibaba trained netpreneur. So one of the terms that I learned from the China digital economy, I think it was when e-commerce boost in 2012 to 2013, it was because of the smartphone evolution. So every new inflection point, I think there was a key inflection point you see that China really transformed because of the new smartphone evolution. But having said that, I believe that transformed a lot of non-core users. I think what I want to point here in this forum is that because of pandemic, we bring a lot of non-traditional core users who are reluctant to come online, come digital world, to move to online. I think that's one part that is accelerated the pace of digital adoption to some extent. All right, I think we have a question coming up from Sue. Sue actually asked this question, is that Sue Ng. She asked that, how can we have a quick start to implement data analytics, and what are the key metrics to track? So perhaps this time I want to go for the gentleman first. Ashran, you may want to take on this question.
I have not changed gender. It's just a decision from moderator. You know, just like the previous panel, if you were in the previous panel, so it's, you know, the conclusion I thought was very apt. That means make sure first you've got clarity of intent on what you want to do, right? The thing about data and all these things, right? Take out the buzzwords and just go to fundamental. What is it that you need to actually make any decision you want to make? That's what it's all about at the end of the day, right? The buzzword on data insights and all these things sometimes scares people off. But for business like all like us must also, you know, position IC right? But to quick start, you know, once you've got that clarity, you can actually identify you know, sources of where you are capturing the data to be able to pull things together, number one. Number two is to actually look at other third-party sources that would allow you to give that insights to make that decision. So that's what, for me, a quick starter kind of thing. And just like the previous session panel spoke about, you could start as basic as using an Excel. But using an Excel just means that you're dealing with your own data sets. But when you need beyond your own data sets, that's where you come to folks like, you know, Dattel or Similarweb or Shipper for that matter.
Right. Thank you, Ashran. I think what's interesting, I think through this morning, I gathered that there are two sets of data. There are one set of data is within your own organization. You can start with. In fact, with Excel, you can do most of the job. If you are good in Excel, you know, or Power Pivot and so on, you can gather a lot of things inside. And of course, there are another set of data which you don't own, which belongs to an external party, that you have to come to external platform like Dattel, Similarweb, Shipper, and so on, right? So any of those could be, even Google Analytics to some extent, will help you to present those data. But how do you actually converge them to make an informed decision, right? So maybe, Carroll, you want to jump in to elaborate on this point?
Yeah. Yeah, so like what Ashran said, there is actually a two parts of data, right? I'll share with you the experience that we're having right now. So Similarweb is actually a competitor analysis tool. When we walk into the client, everyone is asking, are you Google Analytics, right? So people tend to actually mix up like, GA and, direct measurement data and computer analysis data, right? So it's a two different things, right? So, but I want to tell the questions coming from Sue is that actually, in that sense, you can always start with your own data, which is Google Analytics. In fact, Google Analytics actually give you a lot of view, like, to something that you can find the opportunity and what will be the potential for you. I'll just pick 2 examples here, right? So let's say you actually look into Google Analytics, right? You actually you go in and you see a lot of like visit, bounce, and all this is like jargon to you, right? But you just need to understand a little bit more. Actually, that give you a lot of meaning to that. Like for example, like let's say you're looking into visits example, right? Visit, let's say the active session is by 30 minutes. Is that you try to understand the way? So if a user that stay on the site within the 30 minutes, is that a very sticky user to you? Is that something that I want to remain on the site, or actually I should retarget them? So these are the user that you want. So and these your data. You don't without looking at others, you already have a very rich audience that you're having, right? And I will pick another metrics. Let's say you look into bounce. Bounce means what? Like user come to the site and then leave the site immediately, right? Within a few seconds, right? So those are the things that you want to reduce. So how you want to make the user sticky to your site. Example, you're creating content, right? We actually came from agency time when, by just changing the color of the button, like submit now from a blue to a red, it actually increased the conversion by 20%, example like that. So it's not like Ashran said, it's not as big as you think. You are actually knowing this on a daily basis. You run campaign with agency or you run the campaign by yourself. You always, the report come with a visit, bounce, and all this. What does it mean? So that's actually it's not running far from that. Is where you are seeing how your audience or your user engaging with you. That's actually I hope we can I hope I answer your question, Sue. It's actually not hard because it's all around that how user engaging in the internet space. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. I think what you just mentioned is some in the e-commerce term, we call it the A/B testing, right? A lot of time you need to do a lot of testing with the data, actually test it live. The beauty about digital world, you can actually test it out to evaluate the result. If not, you change. A good example, because I run a lot of stores for a lot of brand owners in a lot of platforms and so on, right? So a typical campaign day, you notice there's a lot of banners that's out there, right? If this banner doesn't yield the result, what we want versus the forecast, we change the banners. We have all sets of banners standby to actually address the opportunity. So this is a classic example of what I mean by using, you have preset data you expected, right? The result to be, because the data tell you so. But if the result doesn't yield to what you want to achieve, then you change. So this is a good way of doing A/B testing, right? With data, all right? A classic example, all right? So the next questions, I'm going to probably ask Kelvin, right? Someone who don't come from a data background, who don't have a data degree, because Karen asked this question, how do you are not coming from a data science and data analytics background skill set. How can you kickstart having a limited budgets? Maybe you can share some lights in this perspective. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for asking these questions. Well, if the people today who are listening, I just want to say that the internet is free. I mean, you don't have to join any expensive classes in order to understand data. Just to give you a brief example from what I did is that you can just surf through Coursera.com and then join some of the classes that are available for free. Or probably if you prefer not to join classes, but reading some articles, or probably do some practical stuff, or probably buying some books and do some reading your own self, it can be a great way to kickstart your data journey. But the only thing that probably I want to emphasize the most is that the success of your data journey truly depends on how often you practice it. I see so many people reading books, articles, but if they don't implement what they read or learn, they're not going to do well in the data journey.
Thank you, Gary. Right.
So, Sunny, can I chime in a little bit?
Please do.
Sorry, kacau moderator. No, just an extension to what Kelvin was saying just now and to Karen's question, right? So I'm a believer and I propagate this. It's all about having a data mindset, right? If your mindset and how you operate your business does not come from that lens, right? Don't even talk about data-driven. It ain't gonna happen, right? And it usually has got to start from the top. If it's a company that has not kind of embarked in this journey, like Kelvin is saying, it's got to start from the top. The top has got to constantly ask the rest of the team, why do you say that? Show me proof. Where's the data for this? Then the culture becomes that, if the culture is not there yet, right? But it's got to have that mindset. It's not so much about I mean, skill sets are important, right? But as an entrepreneur, skill sets can find one, right? You can find skill sets, right? You got no time to learn also, you can find skill sets. But if you don't have the right mindset, right, this conversation will be meaningless also.
Right, true. Okay, I'm going to move on before more questions coming in. I'm going to ask, maybe I'll start with the ladies again this time. But I must say that this is going to be a harder one. I'll leave the easier one for the gentlemen. Is it okay?
No.
Works
Okay,
for
no
us.
worry, Carol, just
bring it on.
Okay. So based on experience, Carol, right? Based on what you work with a lot of clients, of course, don't mention client name. I'm sure there are a lot of large scale, big scale projects that are your top of mind. One of the projects that you think your client and your maybe company, you see them feel miserably because of whatever reason, and what are the key learnings that you can share? Don't mention client name, but I think we don't want to hear success story. We also want to hear about failure first, right? Yeah.
For sure. Actually I got that question. So I was trying to think about, what kind of failure. I will just in terms of, I think it's we call it a failure. I think it is more towards a challenge that we are doing. Maybe I will highlight a few things like instead of one client, I think the most common three things that I've seen why eventually the data driven I would say the strategy is end up like it didn't become successful, right? I will share the first point here is the readiness of the team, right? So like Ashran mentioned, mindset is one. The other thing is like, the knowledge is in fact like Kelvin says, you can search anything in the internet is free, right? I want to highlight this is because we do have actually a client here where using, let's say in this case is using Similarweb, right? So which is they come into Similarweb and see exactly what their competitor do, because is they can 100% see like what keyword their competitor using, what display ad they're buying into, what creative they're using. So all sort of information is there, right? So this client came to us like, oh, okay, I'm using Similarweb, and after that I copy what my competitor did, right? 100%. What are the keywords they're buying? I'm buying 100% to that, right? But eventually I feel I didn't actually perform as per my competitor, right? Why? So eventually, like, I don't think Similar is a right tool. I want to unsubscribe it, which is for me is like, okay. So I think one of the key things, the learning point here is that customer need to understand that there's a lot of factor here, right? You copy the whole entire set of the keyword, but do you actually use the right copy, the right creative, the brand association, is that there? Are you bidding on the right pricing? So there's a lot of factors. So that's number one, right? The second common thing that we are seeing that is that a little bit from what Ashran mentions here, the openness of accepting something new, right? We have a different things here. When we bring in Similarweb to the customer, right? The customer, in terms of the management level, they bought in, right? Okay, we need to go in for data-driven marketing, right? But eventually, the things that when it escalate down to the execution level, and no one's like want to take the ownership, like everyone's think like it's actually another task for me to fulfill, right? So I think the openness is something that we want to put it here, like don't be afraid. Eventually, like how we see that is the management agree to buy in, and eventually like no one is using, then the unsubscriptions is actually coming into the picture, right? I do think like we need to learn faster and fail faster. That's actually something I think the key here. No one know the perfect formula to use how to apply data into the business, but you still need to try and error in that, right? The third thing here is, I think the common thing is like everyone think like the tool that I bought in, it has to be a perfect tool, right? There's no perfect tool, to be honest with you. There's no one tool that can achieve all the goals. So it seems like how Similarweb, we are competent analysis tool, right? When a user bought in, they're like, oh, I thought this tool can actually help me in terms of like trade my campaign. I was like, not exactly. Or can I use this for social listening? It's not exactly that. So I think is a little bit mismatch here, but that's where that we're seeing the most common thing, like how eventually like it is not being successful apply into the business operation. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. So if I hear you correctly, leadership from the top, team readiness, beside the right mindset you must have, and most important is that don't copy blindly. You must innovate. And also depend on the stage of your brand positioning, right? Your brand readiness. Because not all brand equals, right? Yeah. So
that's one thing. Yeah, that's one interesting thing. 3 years Similarweb in the market. Most, I would say 90% of the client that we presented to, everyone's like love the data. Eventually they'll be like, okay, I don't know how to use. That's actually the challenge.
No, same.
All right. So maybe I'm going to ask gentlemen this question, right? So I'll start with Kelvin for this time, right? Can you share one success story, maybe in case of Indonesia's, anything you see in Indonesia's, your previous company, or any landscape using data in your view? Yeah.
Well, probably I can share when I was not as a data analyst. So the company that where we actually use Similarweb for ad strategies campaigns. So we were kind of like,
thank you.
I mean, it's a really great data source actually. So thank you, Carroll. So so what we did is that because it was in the B2B field, so we want to know which companies that probably might be willing to work with us for the solution that we have. And starting from data generation from Similarweb and other sources, then we can see that which industry in Indonesia that might have the higher conversion rate for turning them from prospects into clients. And after working together with the business analysts and also the product team, then we decided to launch a 1 month full campaign just to target the specific industry that we have discussed previously. And the result, well, we can set the from 1,000 companies, we managed to capture 200 companies to deliver them to the sales team in the country. So I would say that 20%, 30% is already a successful enough for us.
Right. Thanks. So Ashran, back to you in Malaysia, right? Maybe is there any successful story top of your mind that you think any of your clients that use data that successfully transform some initiative or projects?
Sure. So we've just kick-started a journey to get SMEs to be more data-driven. It's been a challenging journey, I must say. But yeah, Kelvin laughing, knowing how challenging can be, right? But with the SMEs, right, we started the journey pretty much saying that we can help them define their customers better when they want to do targeting, right? And like you said, that's the results that they want to get. And that's all that we focus on. And because most of them, SMEs especially, if you ask them who your customers are, they will only start from some basic demographics and maybe some of the problem statements that they're trying to address. That's as far as it goes, right? What we've done essentially is, took the power that larger companies have, behavior archetypes and all these other things, to allow them to, in 3-4 steps, find a new angle to approach their client. Find a new angle to discover new prospects, essentially, and create that as a persona of their customers, and with the ability to push that persona to TikTok, to Facebook, so that the interest criteria can be met. So that resonates with them, because a lot of the pain point is that, I want to target this group, but when I go to Facebook Ad Manager, I'm not sure what interest criteria to take, and I start guessing. In some of the people here in the Malay languages, everyone tends to go on the tembak lah approach lah, right? I think, these are the people that's going to be my customers because that's what I see. But you may miss out on the opportunity. So we've got this one SME that does this wood carving clocks. She created a persona using the tool that we had. And she was one of those higher achievers lah, that was able to actually reduce her ad spend by about 35%. Wow. And increase her sales in the next month by 200%.
Wow.
So that's the kind of, like we said just now, the psyche of SMEs, right? Give me something quick, give me something that saves me time, and give me something that I can create impactful results, essentially. And it's purely based on data that they don't have. It's purely based on data that we provide to them. And then we tell them that as they grow their data, and then they can do other funny stuff lah. But at the moment, go get your sale first.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Ashran. Okay, let's try to answer this question for Densha, right? I think I'm not sure it's he or she. Then she asked about this. Just wondering if analytic tools have AI. As you know, we are in IR 4.0 right now. Today, most analytic tools will be using AI, right? You have a lot of BI, but you have AI right now. So BI plus AI. So you're so powerful. Can I just hit and run, and you take care of everything and do the rest, right? So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Right. Maybe start with Carroll first.
I was waiting for the cue. I will tell you the answer is no. Yeah. The reason why I'm saying this is AI is actually one of the component that in terms of like the predictive model and all this, yes, right. But the reason why is that the AI is actually very much pretty depends on. Maybe I'll just take similar in this case. Our methodology AI is actually only it's just one of the four. Right. In that case, that you still need different data input to complete the whole entire data collection set. Right. The reason why is like, for example, in this case, I'll pick one example. Like we have this industry analysis. Right. The AI will automatically actually classify those sites according to the content they're actually putting on the site. Right. So we have actually have one of the big home appliances company site that actually available information. They're selling electronics home appliances. So what we categorize is actually under finance. The reason why their homepage is actually putting a lot of content about zero interest, right? Buying this blender with 12 months zero interest and all these things. It really depends on the content that you actually put. So AI will very fast identify it into the the category that think is actually based on the rules that you write, right? But unfortunately here that you still need a little bit of human inside here, where you still need the data verification. By example, the individual browsing behavior and the data consumption, and then you are seeing like the of course like not just the homepage is also looking into those are the content, the in and out traffic that you actually further identify that this is actually, is that the really a financing side? So yeah, my direct answer is no. It's still, you don't see any, I'm quite confident you don't see any tools that is only relying on AI at the moment.
Thanks. Over to you, Ashran. What do you think? Yeah.
No. I think Carroll pretty much sums it all with regards to AI, and I think it tends to be a misconception, especially with the word AI and what we probably imagine what AI is. If I were to attempt to kind of simplify that term, right? The thing that an artificial intelligence does, it actually is the ability to learn and analyze mundane processes that would take a long time. Right?
Yes.
That's all that AI does if I were to try to simplify it.
Yes.
Right.
For all the final decisions that you need to make, you still got to use your brain. And discussions and your experience to see whether that input that's coming in based on that analysis makes sense or not. And my other partner likes to say this, like when we talk about data, data is not like a genie in the box, You cannot like, rub it and then straight away it gives you an answer and gets you what you want to do. It guides you in your decision-making process, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the answer, from a very literal perspective. It just guides you. And I think that's very important, fundamental that everyone needs to be aware of.
Yeah, you still also need to be a little bit more questionable about the data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let me try to sum up one more questions from the Q&A session here. I think a lot of them ask about consumer purchase journey, right? From opinion forming all the way to purchase intent, to purchase, repeat purchase, and loyal customers, right? So of course, we all know that data can play a big role in every part of this consumer purchase journey. Whether do you want to do a targeted marketing at the top, targeted marketing to loyal customers and repeat purchase behavior and so on and so forth. So maybe I want to ask the panel to share one insight each. This could be just the, one of the last few questions because we have 5 more minutes, so some time check. So just want to say, from this perspective, from a consumer purchase journey, right? From this pyramid of awareness all the way to loyal customers, where do you think, from a marketing strategy perspective, the data can be best used and why, in your opinion? So we'll start with Kelvin first, right, from our guest all the way from Jakarta this time.
Okay. If I have to say, probably the point is when they already put the stuff inside the basket, but they didn't purchase it. I mean, it's almost something like almost to get the revenue for the company, but all of a sudden they just disappear. So I guess that in terms of customer journey, this is one thing that marketers have to focus on, because if they successfully bring the customers back to the app, then they will generate the revenue. And if not, then they're just going to lose the customer and they will have the churn rate higher.
I like it. That's sales conversion, right? So don't tell me about how many click through, how many impression, how many page view. I want sales conversion.
If you're focusing on people visiting pages, looking at probably longer hours, I don't see the point if we put that on the list. I mean, we can put that on the list, but not on the top. Probably after you finish the first priority, then you can move on to that section. But I personally just need to focus on the basket.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Back to you, Ashran. What do you think?
Slightly different perspective than Kelvin. I would take a path where if you are able to kind of track the data points of the whole journey itself, you focus on where the biggest gap is during that time of your business, right? So like Kelvin's example, if at that point of act is where the biggest gap is, then solve that problem there. And sometimes when you solve that problem, you will see suddenly your awareness side shrinks down a little bit or whatever it is. So it's all relative within the whole journey itself, if you ask me. And it changes within time where you should be focusing on that. So that's my perspective with regards to that.
Thanks, Ashran. Over to you, Carroll. Yeah.
Right. And actually a combination of Ashran and Kelvin, because I think Kelvin is more from the brand side. Is dollar signs is actually a more important one, right? I think maybe I'll highlight something like I coming from marketing and then coming into analytics. So one thing I observed, I'm not sure whether you agree. Today, marketing actually evolved into equals to sales. I sometimes don't really understand why marketing is equals to sales, right? The whole entire marketing is towards like moving towards performance marketing. Performance marketing is actually one of that, right? But the consideration of the user journey is still the funnel, right? You can't expect like digital do magic for you, like, oh, I tried all the newspaper and billboard and today it doesn't work. I go to digital, I can sell my product, right? It is not exactly that way. It's still a consideration journey in the attribution model, right? So I think what happened here is like if this is a direct way to the first, you're actually coming from brand side, the first thing you can actually look into is where the drop bucket is, right? That's actually the first. But when you go back and trace why actually contributing to the end result, it is actually you realize that it could be the considerations stage is actually you miss out, or the awareness stage you actually miss out. So I think it is actually applied to the whole journey, but it's not awarding to the last click or last conversion point. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Agree with you, right? Thanks a lot. So I think we have 2 more minutes. I'm going to ask all our 3 panelists, if there's one key takeaway in one word, you can summarize as a tips for our audience today, what would that be? We'll start with Ashran first this time. Yeah.
Well, I will kind of recap whatever.
Other than the word mindset, mindset cannot be used again.
Well, I'd say, don't be scared with the term data analytics. Embrace it. Focus on the intent. I was going to say have the right, whatever I'm not supposed to say. Understanding your customers is key. In terms of making sure that you're successful in what you're doing. And one of the important things is to be able to create a customer persona that is not just based on your gut feel, but driven by data, because that sets the foundation for all your other activities. And God willing, you get that foundation right in defining that customer persona that you have, then you will see results in the various part of the journey that you're going through.
Got it. So if I hear the word is customer persona, right? Got it. Thanks, Kelvin. Yeah. What do you think, Kelvin?
Well, I think that the key takeaways, I'm just going to make this brief. So open mindset, understanding your business and your problems and also the goals. And finally, instead of focusing on the trends in analytics, just focus on what relevance to you. That's far more important.
Got it. Open mindset and what's relevant to you. Got
yes.
it. Thank you. Finally, Carroll, we come back to you. We keep the ladies last.
First and last.
I think one word is act now. I think you should start now in a way, like, instead of like looking what other people do, just be a pioneer in terms of like, even for your own company or actually for your team, just start from yourself. I think that's actually very important. The act now is actually bring me to a simple way to see data. If you want to start with this, see data as like a body checkup, right? You go for a body checkup because you want to identify the company where the potential, like for example, I go for body checkup, I check my blood, right? Is that I have sugar high, or actually have a tendency of urine problem, right? So after you run the body checkup, you will know where to hit, right? So that's actually how you see that, to help you identify the strength and opportunity to go in. So that's actually, and it's not hard, to be honest, like what Ashran said. Those are the words that is pretty straightforward for you to use it into your company. For example, like how Kelvin said, is a drop cut is very, very straightforward. Like is because people don't buy because of the price, then that's actually how you look into that. Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. And I must say that you know what, the times is about right. We just finished by an hour. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all our panelists here. Kelvin all the way from Indonesia, Ashran from Malaysia, and of course Carol from Malaysia as well, and taking care of the region, right? So with that, thank you very much. It's really lovely to have all of you here. I'm going to hand this back to the MC. Thank you. Lauren, over back to you. Thanks. Bye-bye. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And you guys, let's also don't forget to thank Sunny for a job well done on being our moderator for today.
Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you so much, you guys. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. You can even say thanks in the chat if you like. But for now, I just have to mention one thing. I liked how you wrap things up just now, Carol. You talked about acting now, because the whole point of today is to show people that even though data is such a the word data itself is so scary, because it embodies such a big idea. So the fact that we have to still do it, even though it scares us, I think you've given everyone here the inspiration to try and start doing it as soon as possible. So to each and every one of you, I wanted to thank you for being so well spoken. I enjoyed the entire presentation, and thank you for allowing us to laugh alongside with you. It was really fun. You kept things so lighthearted, and I love that, every single moment of it. So thank you so much for being a part of Marketing Fest Asia 2021, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you stay safe. Feel free to stay on with us for the last panel discussion of today. And till then, I hope you're well, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Sure. See you, Lauren.
All right. Take
All
care.
right. Bye, you
Carol,
guys.
Kelvin,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.